Our pathway was a long one. We have been working on this for about 8 years of really trying to get that design together. And as Bruce talked about, we really put a lot of effort into making it easy to use. How can we make it so that that patient has the ability to walk up to the machine, it automates all of that setup time, cleaning time, they can connect, the automation's there around their activities, and then when they're done, they can walk away and the machine can take over again. I think we've proven that easy is hard. It takes a lot of work and a lot of design to make something very simple to use. So one of the ways we did that was to actually just go and talk to a lot of people. So I think as Bruce discussed as well, the water device underneath the treatment device, single footprint, that actually wasn't our original concept. We had that as one idea, but we also had the classic idea of water devices in some other location. So we went off with some phone models to a bunch of users, patients who are currently doing home hemodialysis in a couple of different cities, and showed them that, talked to them about it, and every single one of them said, for me, if you can make the water device quiet, put it underneath, make it a single thing so my house doesn't look like a hospital. That's why there's a water device underneath it, is from hearing from customers. It looks modern, it looks different, and that's sort of how we began to have that feedback about don't make the house look like a hospital, don't make someone be able to walk into the home, realize that the patient has an acute illness, make it difficult to see that it's a medical device, and make it really built around the patient. Other areas were really around the user interface, really making sure that we got it right around how filters can be replaced and spending a lot of time doing that. That's the advantage of starting from scratch, that we were able to go with some concepts that were very fresh because we could actually start from really a white space and design it from there. Sharesource is the other product that we got developed along the way, and that really came from having those customer discussions. Why aren't you doing high-dose hemodialysis? Why are more patients at home? The device, VIVIA, goes after knocking off many of those barriers to patients going home. But one of the ones we kept hearing over and over again that the device itself couldn't solve was that of the connection that doctors typically have with their patients. They come in 3 times a week, they know exactly what they're up to. When they go home, what are they doing now? So what can we do to address that? Well, so in the back of the machine, we've now put a wireless modem that takes all the treatment data at the end of the treatment, uses the telephone signals that are in the area, a cellular phone modem, packages it up and sends it over to a server, where then the physician can get access to it through a secure website. So trying to really make that connection from the clinician to the patient. What do they do? What happened last night? They call up and have a concern about, I had a number of alarms last night. The nurse can just bring up their treatment record immediately, see how it went, talk them through what they can do to address it. That works really through, as I was saying, the device is in the patient's home, takes a cellular signal, transmits that over to our Sharesource servers. The hospital is able to come in there and see what's been going on with the patient immediately and have that turnaround.
Is it instant?
It's not instant.
After the treatment? It's
after the treatment. So good question on live monitoring. We looked at live monitoring. We actually went and talked to a lot of the clinics that have done historically live monitoring and found that many of them were stopping that. But they found that as long as they had a very safe device and really trained the patient well, that was sufficient for them, and they were really turning away from doing live monitoring and turning it more into how can we understand what they did, and really to minimize the amount of work for a patient. Home hemo patients currently spend a lot of time writing stuff down. I started at this time. My weight was this. At 1 hour into it, the blood flow rates were this, and the dialysate flow rates were this. And just lots of paper records, because that's what they bring into the hospital to hand over to the doctor once every month or so, and then somebody's got to deal with that paperwork and process it. We also heard from a number of nurses that they would see patients in the lobby just before the doctor's appointment, writing things down, seeing that blood pressures were remarkably stable across day to day after day after day. And so how can we get them a more accurate record into the hospital? How can we take away that burden of the patient having to keep track of things? The machine knows what time it started.
Okay.
The machine knows what his flow rates were. Take all that information and send it over. Baxter has a role in here as well. One of the things that we can do is if the machine ever has a problem that the patient calls up and says it's broken, before a technician ever shows up to their house, pull a file off of it, look at it and see what might be wrong with it. And when they go out there, they're in and out of their house as quickly as possible. When we talk about reducing the therapy burden for patients, the ease of use of doing home hemodialysis and the access to high-dose hemodialysis, that is not just about the device, it's about the number of times people knock on their door, it's about the number of phone calls they have to make to order supplies, it's about all those things they got to keep track of. And VIVIA tries very hard to take care of that and move that away from them. In the future, we hope that we can do other things with that connection, including helping the patient order supplies as well. But for now, it's really there to help them do technical service of the device and really minimize the amount of time we spend into the house if there's ever an issue. So training, we spend a lot of time trying to figure out what's the challenge that hospitals have with training patients. Why has not more patients gone home with hemodialysis? What's getting in the way there? So we built a unique training system that really got, not only we spend time training the hospital on how to understand how VIVIA works, but also how to train patients and how to do that training not about technology, some of that, but how to actually train adults. What's the adult learning process? How do you interact with them? How does repetition play into that? And how do you get them to an advanced level? So we're bringing that as well to customers. And then sustainability is something that's also very important to Baxter. We spent a lot of time looking at this at some of our plants and some of our behaviors within the company, but we were interested with VIVIA, is there a way for us to actually see what's the impact of our carbon footprint? We get those questions off of customers in a number of countries, so we did an analysis to see where do we stand. It was actually a poster and an abstract that was presented this morning, the results of that. What we really found from that is that just going home, doing that 3 times a week, 4 hours at a time, hemodialysis, moving that at home, reduces your carbon impact of the therapy by 1/3. So the less driving, the less of nurses having to come in, all of that, just reducing that already knocks down your carbon impact of the therapy. However, if you take that same machine and do it more frequently, get up to high-dose hemodialysis 5 times a week, 7 hours at a time, your carbon impact with that device goes way up. And that's because those devices haven't been designed for the home environment. So companies like Baxter, companies like NextStage, companies who end up designing devices really for the home environment, they see a huge carbon reduction. And really, when we looked at the overall VIVIA side of it, what was the impact? That extended use of the dialyzer and the blood lines plays the biggest role. Not throwing things into the trash, not having to have them shipped to the house, just reducing that, reduced our carbon impact, again by 1/3 from an in-center therapy, even with 5 times a week, 7 hours at a time. So we end up having a very nice story around just overall sustainability, and it fits really into Baxter's overall vision of what's important from a company standpoint.